Have you ever stopped to think about what makes someone believe in something that clearly doesn't make sense? Whether it's astrological predictions, miraculous cures, or bizarre conspiracy theories, there's a recurring pattern. Pseudoscience and cults manage to convince millions of people that the truth is hidden and that only a select few have access to it. But what happens when this mechanism of manipulation finds a megaphone capable of spreading any idea to billions of people in seconds? What happens when social media becomes the perfect breeding ground for misinformation to thrive and for entire communities to isolate themselves within their own parallel realities? The result is a world where everyone believes in their own version of the truth, reinforced by algorithms, digital gurus, and informational bubbles. And the worst part? This phenomenon doesn't just affect others, it affects us too. At some point, all of us have fallen for a false idea without realizing it. The difference between an innocent mistake and a deep dive into misinformation lies in our ability to question and understand the mechanisms that shape our beliefs. In this video, we're going to explore how pseudoscience, cults, and social media have created the perfect storm of misinformation in the modern era. We'll understand what makes us believe what we believe, and most importantly, how we can protect ourselves from this mental trap. Let's begin. Pseudoscience is not a new phenomenon. Since ancient times, humans have sought explanations for the world around them, often creating narratives that made emotional sense but had no basis in reality. Before modern science, many of these explanations were rooted in myths, religions, and oral traditions. The problem is that even after the development of the scientific method, these ideas did not disappear. On the contrary, they evolved and found new ways to infiltrate society. The philosophy of science has spent centuries trying to define what distinguishes science from pseudoscience. Karl Popper, one of the leading figures in this discussion, proposed that the true criterion for separating a scientific theory from a pseudoscientific one is falsifiability. If an idea can be tested and potentially disproven by evidence, then it belongs to the realm of science. If, on the other hand, it continuously adapts to avoid being refuted, as we see in astrology, homeopathy, and many spiritual beliefs, then we are dealing with pseudoscience. But this definition, as useful as it is, does not prevent pseudoscientific ideas from spreading. This happens because they offer something that science does not always provide: comfort. Scientific truth is impersonal, cold, and sometimes frightening. The idea that the universe has no inherent purpose, that our lives are the product of chance, and that some diseases simply have no cure is difficult to accept. Pseudosciences fill this gap by offering explanations that make emotional sense, even if they are false. Furthermore, pseudoscience often disguises itself in the language of real science. Many pseudoscientific practices adopt technical jargon to appear more legitimate. That's why we hear terms like vibrational frequencies, quantum energy, and water memory in alternative healing practices. These are real concepts in physics and chemistry, but they are completely distorted to serve narratives with no scientific basis. This phenomenon is not just an innocent mistake. Often, powerful economic interests are behind the perpetuation of pseudoscience. Entire industries profit from selling products and treatments based on false premises. The wellness industry, for example, generates billions of dollars every year by promoting miracle diets, unproven supplements, and alternative healing methods that exploit the desperation of vulnerable people. But if pseudoscience has always existed, what has changed now? What makes this historical moment different from previous ones? The answer lies in how information is distributed and consumed. For most of human history, false ideas took a long time to spread and were often challenged by scientific, religious, or political authorities. Today, with the rise of social media, anyone can share an idea, and if that idea is engaging enough, it can reach millions in a matter of hours. This new dynamic has made pseudoscience not only more prevalent but also harder to combat. When a rumor or false belief spreads on social media, it doesn't need concrete evidence to convince people. It just needs to be emotionally appealing and align with the audience's pre-existing beliefs. Additionally, social media algorithms favor content that generates engagement, which means that false information, because it is often more sensational, tends to spread faster than the truth. Belief in pseudoscience is not a matter of intelligence or education level. Research shows that even highly educated people can be deceived, especially when false information is presented convincingly or reinforces already established beliefs. The problem isn't a lack of knowledge, but rather the way our brains process information. We are wired to seek patterns and narratives that make sense, even when those patterns don't actually exist. This cognitive bias, combined with our desire to believe in something greater than ourselves, allows pseudoscience to continue thriving. The key question is, how can we combat this phenomenon? How can we become less susceptible to these cognitive traps? The answer lies in scientific education, the development of critical thinking, and the willingness to challenge our own beliefs. But to better understand the power of these narratives, we need to look at a phenomenon that shares many of the same psychological mechanisms as pseudoscience: cults. Cults have always fascinated society, whether because of the mystery surrounding them or the terror of their most extreme cases. But beyond the sensationalist stories, cults operate with an extremely efficient psychological and social mechanism that helps explain why so many people fall for absurd beliefs, the same mechanism that enables the spread of pseudoscience and misinformation in the modern era. A cult is not defined solely by its ideological or religious content, but by the psychological structure that traps its followers. The foundation of any cult is a closed system of beliefs where doubt is eliminated and any questioning is interpreted as an attack. This shielding against criticism creates a kind of cognitive bubble where external truth no longer has a place. The cult leader or senior members become the guardians of the truth, and any external challenge is seen as a threat from the outside world. This kind of compartmentalized thinking is based on a phenomenon called cognitive dissonance. When a strong belief conflicts with reality, our brain has two options. Either we accept that we were wrong, or we distort the facts to keep believing. Most people choose the second option because admitting we were deceived is too painful. This is why, even when an apocalyptic prophecy fails or a cult leader is exposed as a criminal, many followers do not abandon their beliefs. On the contrary, they become even more devoted. The same happens with pseudoscience. When an alternative theory is debunked by scientists, its supporters do not back down. Instead, they claim there is a conspiracy to hide the truth. Beyond thought control, cults also create deep social bonds that make it difficult for members to leave. One of the most common tactics is isolation. The group becomes the only source of identity and belonging for its followers. Anyone who deviates from the belief system or tries to leave the cult is punished, whether through ostracism, threats, or emotional manipulation. The same pattern appears in online pseudoscientific communities, where anyone who questions the group's official narrative is labeled a traitor or a sellout. Social media algorithms amplify this effect by creating bubbles where we only interact with people who think like us. Cults are not limited to religious groups or apocalyptic sects. They can take political, economic, and even pseudoscientific forms. Anti-vaccine movements, climate change, denial groups, and conspiracy theories about technology often exhibit cult-like characteristics. A charismatic leader, a secret truth that society supposedly hides, and a strong sense of community based on the rejection of traditional critical thinking. The connection between cults and pseudoscience becomes even clearer when we analyze how both phenomena use fear and hope as tools of manipulation. Fear is one of the most powerful emotional triggers that exist, and cults are well aware of this. They present a terrifying problem: the end of the world, systemic corruption, an invisible danger, and then offer the exclusive solution. This tactic is also present in pseudoscience. Miracle diets that claim to cure any disease, natural products that supposedly replace real medications, or even theories that explain all the world's problems in a simplistic and comforting way. And if cults have always existed, why talk about them in the modern context? Because the internet has amplified their ability to expand and made their methods even more effective. What was once a slow process, limited to small groups, can now happen on a global scale. Today, it's possible to be recruited by a cult without even realizing it. A YouTube video, a discussion in a forum, or an Instagram influencer can serve as the entry point into a closed system of beliefs that gradually drains an individual's critical thinking ability. Modern cults no longer need temples or secret gatherings. They exist in Facebook groups, WhatsApp broadcast lists, and influencer profiles that build loyal followings around their worldview. The difference is that while in the past, direct and prolonged contact was necessary for someone to be indoctrinated, today, just a few clicks and the continuous reinforcement of carefully selected information are enough for the transformation to take place. The central point of this discussion is not to demonize every online community or every alternative belief. Humans need a sense of belonging and seek answers to the chaos of the world. The problem arises when that sense of belonging is built on the denial of reality and the rejection of any questioning. This leads us into dangerous territory where any doubt is seen as an attack and any criticism as a conspiracy against the truth. If we want to understand the spread of misinformation in the digital age, we need to understand how cults and pseudoscience feed on our desire for simple answers and absolute certainty. But there is one crucial factor that has amplified all of this in an unprecedented way: social media. It not only allows these ideas to spread, but also creates the perfect conditions for them to thrive. Social media has transformed the way we consume information and interact with the world. In the past, we relied on newspapers, books, and experts to gain knowledge. Today, all it takes is opening an app and swiping a finger across the screen to access an endless stream of content. However, this abundance of information comes with a dangerous side effect: the creation of informational bubbles that reinforce pre-existing beliefs and hinder critical thinking. The problem starts with how social media algorithms work. In theory, these platforms should expose us to a wide variety of ideas, enabling debate and knowledge exchange. But in practice, the exact opposite happens. Algorithms are designed to maximize the time we spend on the platform, and the best way to do that is by showing us content we already agree with. The more we interact with a certain type of post, the more the platform assumes we want to see more of that same content. This creates a vicious cycle where we are constantly exposed to the same ideas with no opposing viewpoints. This phenomenon, known as the filter bubble, has a profound impact on how we shape our opinions. Instead of being challenged by new perspectives, we are comforted by information that reaffirms what we already believe. If someone starts watching videos about conspiracy theories, the algorithm quickly begins suggesting more and more content of the same kind, pushing that person deeper into that world. The same happens with pseudoscience and misinformation. Once a user shows interest in pseudoscientific content, the platform keeps feeding them more of the same, strengthening their belief in it. The effects of informational bubbles are not limited to reinforcing individual beliefs. They also contribute to the radicalization of entire groups. When a community consumes only one specific type of content without being exposed to opposing viewpoints, it becomes increasingly dogmatic and resistant to criticism. The result is extreme polarization and the construction of parallel realities where truth becomes relative and the only reliable source of information is the one that confirms the group's worldview. Additionally, social media favors emotional and sensationalist content. Studies show that false information tends to spread faster than the truth because it is designed to provoke intense reactions. Fake news about miracle cures, government conspiracies, and fabricated scandals often generate more clicks, shares, and engagement than fact-based articles. This means that the very structure of social media encourages the spread of misinformation because it is more profitable than the truth. Another important factor is how social media has transformed the authority of information. In the past, knowledge was validated by experts and recognized institutions. Today, anyone can become an authority on any subject as long as they can build an audience. Credibility is no longer dependent on knowledge or academic background, but rather on charisma, storytelling, and engagement techniques. This leads us to the phenomenon of digital influencers, who often become the primary sources of knowledge for millions of people, regardless of their actual qualifications to speak on a given topic. The information bubble and the cult of personality that develop on social media create the perfect environment for the spread of pseudoscience and misinformation. When someone becomes emotionally connected to an influencer, they start trusting everything that person says, even if it contradicts scientific evidence and expert opinions. Simply following someone daily creates an illusion of closeness, making followers feel like part of an exclusive community that possesses special knowledge the rest of the world ignores. This phenomenon is amplified by community reinforcement. When an influencer promotes a pseudoscientific idea, their followers not only believe it, but also actively defend it against criticism. Any attempt to debunk the information is seen as a personal attack, further strengthening the group's conviction. This dynamic turns belief in pseudoscience and conspiracy theories into a matter of identity rather than evidence. Social media did not create pseudoscience or cult-like movements, but it has amplified their reach in an unprecedented way. What was once limited to small, isolated circles can now be shared with millions of people in a matter of seconds. Worse, the structure of these platforms encourages polarization and dogmatism, making it increasingly difficult for people to break out of these bubbles and reassess their beliefs. If we want to understand how misinformation spreads in the modern era, we need to acknowledge the role social media plays in this process. More than just neutral spaces for sharing ideas, these platforms are designed to capture our attention, exploiting our most basic instincts and reinforcing pre-existing beliefs. The question remains, if the very structure of the internet favors misinformation, how can we resist this cycle? And how can we prevent charismatic influencers from becoming the new gurus of pseudoscience? Digital influencers have become the modern-day oracles, With millions of followers and a reach that surpasses any traditional media outlet, they have the power to shape opinions, dictate behaviors, and even redefine entire concepts of health, science, and reality. But what happens when this influence is used to spread misinformation? How do charisma and the illusion of authenticity make people blindly trust content creators, even when their claims have no scientific basis? The answer lies in how we build trust. In the past, authority in a given field was earned through knowledge and experience. Doctors, scientists, and experts had to spend years studying and publishing research before being recognized as authorities in their fields. Today, all it takes is a camera, a well-crafted script, and an appealing aesthetic to become an instant expert. Credibility is no longer about expertise, it's about digital presence. The secret to influencers' success lies in their perceived authenticity. Unlike traditional public figures who maintained a formal distance from their audience, influencers build a close relationship with their followers. They share their daily lives, their vulnerabilities, and their most personal thoughts. This level of exposure creates the illusion that they are, just like us, approachable and trustworthy. When someone feels emotionally connected to an influencer, they tend to trust them almost unquestioningly. And it is precisely this trust that paves the way for the spread of misinformation. The relationship between influencers and pseudoscience is particularly dangerous because, in many cases, these figures genuinely believe what they are saying. They do not see themselves as frauds, but as individuals who have uncovered a hidden truth and are trying to share it with the world. This kind of belief can be incredibly seductive, as it gives influencers the feeling of being special messengers, people who see what others fail to notice. The problem is that without any commitment to scientific rigor, their claims are often based more on intuition and anecdotes than on real evidence. This explains why so many influencers promote pseudoscientific ideas, from alternative cures to miracle diets and conspiracy theories. If a narrative generates engagement and reinforces group identity, it hardly matters whether it's true or not. What's important is that it serves as an emotional trigger for the audience. And social media algorithms ensure that these narratives spread quickly, boosting content that generates more reactions regardless of its accuracy. Another concerning aspect is the commercialization of misinformation. Many influencers turn their pseudoscientific beliefs into a highly profitable business model. The sale of revolutionary supplements, energy healing courses, and products that claim to detox the body has become a billion-dollar market, fueled by the blind trust of their followers. When an influencer promotes a product, they're not just selling an item, they're selling a worldview, a narrative that suggests there is secret knowledge that mainstream science is trying to hide. And there's yet another factor that makes this dynamic so powerful: the herd effect. When a popular influencer adopts an idea, many others follow suit. This creates the illusion of consensus, making it seem like the information is widely accepted when, in reality, it's just an echo within a digital bubble. This is how pseudosciences like astrology, climate change denial, and detox diets become trends, even without any scientific backing. The biggest challenge is that, contrary to what many believe, directly confronting a false belief can have the opposite effect of what's intended. Psychological studies show that when someone feels their worldview is being attacked, their tendency isn't to reconsider their belief but to reinforce it even more. This happens because our beliefs are part of our identity, and admitting we were wrong can be a painful process. That's why the best way to combat misinformation isn't to ridicule those who believe in it, but to create an environment where questioning is safe and encouraged. If we want to reduce the impact of misinformation spread by influencers, we need to change the way we consume content. Instead of blindly trusting a single source, we should seek information from different places, compare perspectives, and develop a more critical eye toward what is presented to us. And more importantly, we need to ask ourselves, are we following these people because we truly believe in what they say, or because we enjoy the sense of belonging they provide? In the end, the problem isn't just with influencers, it's with all of us. The internet has given us access to an ocean of information, but it has also placed us before a massive challenge, learning how to navigate these waters without drowning in illusions. The question remains, are we ready to take on this responsibility? Misinformation has become a structural problem in modern society, but that doesn't mean we are completely defenseless against it. While social media amplifies the spread of pseudoscience and conspiracy theories, it can also be a powerful tool for promoting critical thinking. The big question is, how can we protect ourselves from manipulation and avoid falling into the traps of misinformation? The first step is to develop an awareness that we are all susceptible to believing false information. Confirmation bias, one of the most studied psychological mechanisms in cognitive alternative science makes us give more credibility to content that reinforces what we already believe while rejecting information that contradicts our convictions. This means that simply being exposed to an idea is not enough to change our minds. We must actively seek to challenge our beliefs with opposing arguments and evidence. Questioning one's own worldview is not a sign of weakness, but rather of intellectual maturity. Another essential aspect is learning to differentiate evidence from opinion. A common characteristic of pseudoscience and modern cults is the replacement of facts with emotional narratives. Instead of presenting verifiable data, misinformation spreaders tell compelling stories filled with personal experiences and emotional appeals. This makes many false ideas seem more real than reality itself. The problem is that individual experiences are not scientific proof. Something may seem true to someone and still be completely false. The most effective way to protect ourselves from this type of manipulation is to constantly question the source of information. Who is saying this? What are this person's credentials? Is there a consensus among experts in the field? Are there peer-reviewed studies that support this claim? These simple questions help filter out a vast amount of misinformation and reduce the chances of being deceived by fallacious arguments. Another fundamental point is digital literacy. Many people still don't understand how algorithm manipulation works, how fake news is created, and the tactics used by groups trying to spread misinformation. Understanding how social media platforms prioritize certain content can help explain why some information appears more frequently in our feeds. Additionally, it's important to learn how to verify sources, identify manipulated images and videos, and distinguish legitimate journalism from malicious rumors. We must also be aware of the role emotions play in how we consume information. Content that provokes outrage, fear, or shock is much more likely to go viral, regardless of whether it's true or not. If a post or video triggers an intense emotional reaction, it's a warning sign to pause and fact-check before sharing. Misinformation thrives on impulsivity. The less we think before reacting, the easier it is for false narratives to spread. Another essential defense against misinformation is diversifying our sources of information. If we only consume content from the same creator or media outlet, we place ourselves inside an informational bubble that reinforces our beliefs without exposing us to different perspectives. A variety of sources provides a broader and more critical view of the topics we discuss. This doesn't mean believing everything we read, but rather comparing, contrasting, and forming our own conclusions based on multiple perspectives. Beyond protecting ourselves individually, we have a responsibility to promote a healthy debate environment. Today's digital culture is saturated with tribalism, where any disagreement is seen as a personal attack. This makes constructive dialogue impossible as people retreat into their bubbles and avoid interactions that challenge their ideas. If we want to effectively combat misinformation, we need to reclaim the ability to listen to different opinions without immediate hostility. Finally, it's essential to understand that none of these strategies will work without a genuine commitment to seeking the truth. The internet gives us access to an infinite ocean of knowledge, but it also places the responsibility on us to navigate it wisely. This requires discipline, humility, and the willingness to change our minds when confronted with solid evidence. Critical thinking is not a fixed state, it's a continuous process, a daily practice that demands effort and vigilance. The modern world bombards us with information from all directions, often conflicting with one another. But the truth, no matter how difficult to find, still exists. And it's up to us to decide whether we want to be passive consumers of manipulated narratives or if we're willing to do the hard work of thinking for ourselves. In the end, the choice is always ours. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you a question. How many times in your life have you believed in something only to later find out it was false? Maybe it was a theory, a distorted historical fact, or even a promise of an easy solution to a complex problem. The truth is, no one is immune to misinformation, and recognizing this is the first step to avoiding manipulation. The modern world challenges us in ways we've never seen before. We've never had so much access to information, yet it's never been harder to tell what's real from what's designed to deceive us. In the past, cults required physical isolation to control their followers. Today, they infiltrate our screens disguised as self-help gurus, wellness influencers, or defenders of hidden truths. In the past, pseudosciences relied on oral traditions to spread. Today, they have algorithms doing the dirty work for them, ensuring we only see what reinforces our existing beliefs. But that doesn't mean we're doomed to live in a sea of illusions. We have something powerful on our side, the ability to think critically. Every time we choose to question information before accepting it, we break a cycle of manipulation. Every time we seek reliable sources instead of blindly believing whoever has the most followers, we strengthen the rational side of the internet. Every time we admit we might be wrong and change our minds in the face of solid evidence, we become less vulnerable to dogmas and convenient narratives. And here's a crucial point. Critical thinking doesn't mean blindly distrusting everything and everyone. That mindset can lead to absolute cynicism, making us just as easy to manipulate as those who believe in anything. True skepticism isn't about denying reality, it's about questioning it intelligently. It's the willingness to analyze, compare, test, and above all, keep learning. What we've explored in this video isn't just a problem of the digital age, it's a human problem. Our need to belong, to find meaning in chaos, and to trust charismatic figures has always existed. The difference now is that these vulnerabilities are being exploited on a global scale with a speed and sophistication we've never seen before. And if technology has amplified this problem, it can also be part of the solution. If we use social media not just as a space for passive consumption, but as a place for learning, discussion, and healthy debate, we can change this landscape. In the end, the most important question isn't how do we stop misinformation from spreading, but rather how do we become less susceptible to it? Because as long as there are people willing to believe in pseudosciences and follow digital cults, there will always be someone profiting from it. The only real defense against this phenomenon is strengthening our own ability to discern what's real from what's an illusion. I could simply say, thank you for watching this far, but that wouldn't do justice to what I really want to express. If you've made it to the end of this video, it means you've allowed yourself to question, reflect, and challenge certain ideas. And in a world where attention is constantly fought over by millions of distractions, that is something rare and valuable. Creating this kind of content isn't easy. Talking about misinformation, pseudoscience, and manipulation on social media isn't a light topic, nor is it the kind of video that easily goes viral with a catchy title and fast-paced editing. But if there's one thing that keeps me motivated to continue, it's knowing that there are people like you, willing to go beyond the surface, to think deeply, and to seek a clearer understanding of the world. That, to me, is worth more than any number of views. And this is where I want to share something personal. There were moments when I even asked myself whether these discussions make any difference. In an ocean of disposable content, is it really worth trying to spark reflection? But every time I receive a comment saying that a video helps someone see things from a different perspective or help them break free from a misleading belief, I realize that yes, it is worth it. It's worth a lot, because every mind that opens to critical thinking is a small, silent revolution against manipulation and ignorance. So thank you. For every minute you dedicated to this video, for every time you reflected on an argument, for every time you chose to question instead of just accepting. You are part of a group of people who don't settle for easy answers and who always seek to understand the world more deeply. And that, in itself, is already a great victory. If this video made you think, I invite you to share it with someone, not to convince them of anything, but to open space for more discussions and questioning. Critical thinking doesn't grow in isolation. It strengthens through dialogue. Before you go, there are 2 videos on the screen that might change the way you see reality. One of them might show you something you never noticed about how your mind works. The other might reveal a hidden pattern that influences the way you believe in certain things. But I'm not going to tell you which is which. You'll have to choose and find out for yourself. Click on one now and continue this journey. See you there.